What's good, guys? Welcome to the video. Today we are rambling on about niche fragrances, designer fragrances, indie fragrances, cheapy fragrances, clone fragrances. We're talking about the labels or the categories that we have for these fragrances and how it can sometimes obscure how you think about a scent. Just to label it indie, to label it niche, to label it a clone. There's so many different fragrances and they all come from different backgrounds. You know, some guys decide that they want to impersonate expensive fragrances and they make their own interpretation on said expensive fragrances, and we call that a clone. Some perfumers like to branch out on their own and do their own thing, do something super weird and against the grain, and we call that indie. And some perfume houses specialize in making only scented objects, and we call them niche. Some are mass market, we call them designer, etc. And if you go online, you'll see that there are different fragrance YouTube channels that are dedicated to each of these different things. You know, there are indie only channels, there are pretty much niche only channels, or designer only channels. And I think that, well, that's kind of cool. It's a nice way to categorize fragrances and make them easier to describe, easier to talk about. It can sometimes obscure our opinion of a scent. I feel like this talk is a bit intense for fragrances, but it's unfortunate that this can get in the way of our judgment when we call something a niche fragrance and we put a price tag on it, a big whopping price tag on it. Because it's niche, we can justify that big price tag, you know, even though it's not worth it at all. And maybe because something is labeled indie, we say, oh, that's weird, I'm not gonna try that. And it's actually a really great fragrance. Or maybe if something's labeled designer, we say, ah, it's boring and shitty, whatever. These categories get in the way of us actually enjoying the scent of a fragrance. Because at the end of the day, think about what a fragrance is. Don't think about the labels that we put on them. A fragrance is a vial, generally glass, with scented liquid inside. Scented water, as a pleb would say. So they're all the same, basically. And then we put these labels like indie, niche, designer, etc. on them, and it makes it easier for us to categorize them. But at the same time, it also brings with it these false expectations and these false beliefs. You know, there's fragrances in every category that smell good, and that's no reason to stick away from them. I think you need to view everything as just a scent. So let's just say that you smell something and it smells good, not great, but it's fine. It's a good fragrance. Let's say that it's a niche and it costs, somebody charges us 250 bucks and they say, hey, this is a niche fragrance, and you smell it and you say, okay, oh well, it's a niche fragrance, so I can justify spending $250 on that. It smells good, not necessarily great, but you can't tell me that there wouldn't be those people who would say, oh, it's a niche, well, it must be good. They smell it and just say, whoa, the ingredients are, and our imaginations take hold and say that the ingredients are better when sometimes they aren't. And sometimes the presentation isn't even better. And then let's just take that same example of that fragrance. It smells good, not great, and it smells the exact same, but this niche head smells it again, except this time the person trying to sell it to him says, hey, I've got this fragrance here, it's a clone. It's a clone fragrance and it only costs $50. Would you like it? Well, there are going to be certain amounts of people, probably a large amount of people, who might be a bit turned off by that just because they hear clone or they hear cheap. It's the same damn thing though. It smells the exact same. So if you look at YouTube, or if you look at fragrance reviews online, you'll see inevitably people that say, oh, it's a niche, it's better, or oh, it's an indie, it's weirder, or oh, it's a designer, it's more mass appealing. But at the end of the day, while these are generalizations, and to some extent they're true, that's why all stereotypes exist, is because there's some amount of truth to them, they kind of hold a cloud over our perceptions They alter our perceptions a little bit. Just going back to that fragrance example that I had, you know, you tell somebody that this fragrance is a $250 niche scent, and I know there are going to be people who will justify it and buy it, because there are $250 niche scents that don't smell spectacular. They smell just like a designer fragrance, really. Maybe just a little bit pricier materials. Probably not that much, just from my limited perfume knowledge. And then you take that same fragrance and you call it a clone, or you call it a cheapie, and you say it's $50. That same person, I guarantee you, will be put off by it just because of that. And they're not looking at the scent itself, they're looking at the label, the price tag, the presentation, the prestige, if you will. Since some people like to compare collections, which is mind-boggling to me, how you stay sane and do that, or how you stay out of the poorhouse and do that. So my point being here today for this video, guys, is don't pay attention to the labels that we stick on them afterwards. You know, we say designer, and immediately some people are gonna say, oh, I need to check that one out because it probably gets attention from girls. Or we say, oh, it's niche, and you get those people who say, oh, it must be really weird and too expensive, blah, blah, blah. Or you get clone and you hear, oh, it's cheap, it's an imitation. These are all things you'll feel when you just consider this for a second. Don't just listen to me, think this over yourself. But think about times when you've heard, it's a niche, or, oh, we have associations with these words. And if you really want to appreciate a scent, if you really want to kick the habit of being a niche snob, or being a designer snob, because it runs the other way too, or being a clone fragrance addict, you have to stop looking at these names that we give fragrances and realize that at the end of the day, they're all just bottles of perfume. I feel like I'm making a speech with way more gravity than just bottles of scented liquid, but the truth is it does interfere with our judgment. So guys, this is just my video encouragement to not necessarily look at the tag that we put on a scent, the price tag, the presentation, the name as well, be it niche, indie, designer, whatever. There's stuff that smells good from every one of those categories, and you'll make it a lot easier on yourself if you stop relying so heavily on them. Realize what they're there for. They're there to help us categorize fragrances, but at the end of the day, they aren't deciding factors on whether it smells good, whether there is good quality in them, or what have you, the prestige of these old fragrance houses, whatever, who cares? At the end of the day, does it smell good? Guys, comment down below, what did you think of this video? Have you caught yourself doing this yourself? Do you notice other people do this? When we hear designer, niche, indie, what, clone, whatever, where it automatically triggers something in us because we have a memory of how these fragrances should smell, how we're supposed to react to them, what's supposed to be in them as far as ingredients are concerned. Comment down below. How do you feel about this topic? If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up and the bell to get notified when I come out with new videos. I really hope that you enjoyed this one and you can think this message over, take it to heart, and make your collecting a hell of a lot simpler by just rating fragrances based on the one simple factor of how's it smell and does it stay on my skin. So I'll see you in the next video, guys. Have a great day.